NHTSA has announced that they're going to be analyzing Tesla's Autopilot system due to 11 crashes being reported over the past 3 years, specifically that were done on the highway at night with emergency vehicles, which I find this whole investigation kind of pointless myself because there has never been a point in human history where Tesla has ever disclosed that it's okay for its drivers, even with Autopilot turned on, to look away from the road, to take your hand off the steering wheel, and if that's the liability Tesla is willing to put up with, that's what Tesla is comfortable telling its customers, like, hey, you are responsible for anything this vehicle does, and by turning on Autopilot, you are by no means assuming that the Tesla is now responsible for what happens. You have to be ready to take over at any time because, of course, this is a level 2 autonomous driving system. There is no real investigation necessary, in my opinion. If you're going to be looking at, okay, 11 cases of vehicles with Autopilot turned on making mistakes, because as we know, Tesla's system is not perfect. It does make mistakes, and it probably makes sense that emergency vehicles might be more common in the error rate of how often an accident happens when Autopilot is engaged, because emergency vehicles are more likely to have flaring emergency lights, they're more likely to be parked in weird ways, they're more likely to be stretched across lanes on the freeway, and even without emergency vehicles, there have been cases of Teslas not being able to register when an object is in front of them and realizing that it needs to stop in time. But because the system and the software is not perfect, that's exactly why Tesla has not made that improvement from level 2 to level 3 autonomous driving. That's why they say pay attention, don't take your eyes off the road. And I mean, if the NHTSA wanted to look into how many times like regular drivers crash into emergency vehicles, I guarantee you it would not be double digits. If we're talking about just distracted drivers that go on their phone too much, or drunk drivers that are driving around their old cars that don't even have automatic braking systems, that probably goes on tens of thousands of times within the past few years. And do we need to open up an investigation over that, or do we just arrest those people and say, okay, they're bad drivers? We have actual concrete data from Tesla that miles driven on Autopilot result in over 10 times less collisions than without Autopilot, and I don't think there really being 11 cases of them colliding with emergency vehicles because the driver objectively was not paying attention. That means they are misusing the system. Has anything to do with Tesla, because in its current form, it's meant to be software that's like, okay, it's objectively safer, we have the data, and it's meant to be more convenient, it's meant to make driving more pleasurable, and it's resulting in less fatigue overall because you don't have to be making all these little micro corrections as you drive everywhere. But overall, it does not mean that the system is now liable for what goes on. So basically, there's an investigation going on to a software system that is not at fault, which is, I guess, why this whole process is confusing to me. If the investigation concludes that sometimes Autopilot messes up and sometimes the software is incorrect and doesn't break in time, what is Tesla guilty of exactly? It would be different if Tesla was actively telling people you don't have to pay attention, you don't have to look at the road, or you don't have to keep your hands on the wheel. Then I could see a court case being made of this is not okay because Tesla is saying something is safe and something is comfortable for their drivers to do, when in reality that results in an accident. But Tesla hasn't done that here. It's meant to be like, the software when it's working is convenient, but keep in mind it will make mistakes, so be ready. Now on the flip side, I hope people can understand that yes, this software is not perfect, and that's why I don't believe exactly robo-taxis are around the corner, because it appears that maybe there's a chance of Tesla's not being able to exactly register what's right in front of them. Is the amount of collisions per mile substantially lower? Yes. Is it safer than the average human driver? Yes, but there is by no means evidence of it not making mistakes. We know that, and human drivers make tons of mistakes as well. And of course, every single day, pretty much every single hour, there are multiple people arrested for misusing their vehicles and breaking the law. And just because they have Autopilot turned on and then they misuse the technology, it doesn't suddenly become Tesla's fault, you know? I think that there is a lot of confusion, and there's very easy ways for the media to interpret this, and that's almost a more likely reason as to why these types of investigations take place, is it almost feels like people want the public and the media to be confused on the situation, because you see headlines like Tesla's self-driving system keeps crashing into emergency vehicles, despite there being 11 cases over 3 years, which is really nothing in the grand scheme of accidents in the auto world. And there's also a lot of media outlets that claim that Tesla's vehicles are self-driving, or when they have the self-driving software turned on, they cause crashes. And personally, I think we might be able to avoid a lot of this FUD and a lot of this media misrepresentation investigation if Tesla just didn't necessarily sell a software package called Full Self-Driving, because I agree, it gets a little confusing when there's people on the internet that are misinformed and say, well, I thought Tesla was selling full self-driving, so doesn't that mean the car's driving itself and causing crashes? No, because it's not full self-driving. That's just what they call the software package, and they've been calling it that for 5 years. I don't care if Tesla's plan is, well, one day it will be full self-driving, and probably sometime soon it will be full self-driving, so we're just gonna call it that now, because I see the mistakes the system is making. I see how limited Tesla's beta has been and how slowly they've been incrementally wanting to roll it out and take their real precious time with it, which in my opinion I think is good. I don't think they should rush it out, but I also don't think you should rush the name Full Self-Driving out 5 or 6 years before the software is actually ready, because since 2016 Tesla has been claiming, you know, their cars have the full self-driving hardware, and it's 2021 now, and it's very likely that even in 2022 we're still not going to have full self-driving. So just calling it Autopilot or Enhanced Autopilot or just some type of driver assist functionality would probably get rid of a lot of misinformation out there. There would still probably be some. There would likely be some media articles that try to misrepresent the vehicles and claim that they have a full self-driving mode where the driver is not paying attention and then the car makes mistakes, and that means that software is killing people. But at this time, in the software's current state, that's not the situation at all. Tesla is not liable for whether or not a car collides with an emergency vehicle, despite if it has autopilot on or not. That's the driver's fault. But of course, a lot of this report is just going to be looking into, does autopilot try hard enough to make sure its drivers are paying attention, which I think any human being who has ever used autopilot probably knows. The nagging of the steering wheel is pretty persistent and regular, and Tesla's in-cabin cameras now are even tracking your eyes to make sure that you're paying attention on the road. So you have pressure on the steering wheel to make sure that your hands haven't been removed, and also making sure your eyes are looking forward and not at a phone or distracted by something else in the car. I don't know how many other measurements you can possibly take. I believe other autonomous driving systems out there, like Super Cruise, don't even check to make sure your hands are on the wheel. All they check is to make sure your eyes are on the road. They don't check to make sure your hands on the wheel. You can do whatever you want. I would argue that's potentially more dangerous than Tesla's autopilot, but I guess we don't have enough miles driven to tell how many times Super Cruise vehicles would crash into emergency vehicles, because a lot less miles are driven with Super Cruise because it's very limited on where it actually works. So anyway, this just feels like a unnecessary investigation. I think it's a waste of time, and it pretty much just results in the general public being confused on how this software is used, and I wish more people on the internet were well aware of how much safer it objectively is to drive with autopilot. Just keep your eyes on the road. It's not a level 3 system. You still have to pay attention. You're still responsible. Feel free to let me know how you guys feel on this particular subject. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.